again. Welcome back to Procurement and Supply Chain Live Dubai. Time for one of the big events of today, and that is our next panel, the Procurement Strategy Forum, sponsored by Penny. My guests are Stefan Sickel, Chief Supply Chain Officer at NMC Healthcare. We're also joined by Ahmed Sedky, Vice President Procurement, Ghurair Investment, and Iyad Aldalooj, CEO at Penny Software. Hello to all of you. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a fantastic day so far. We've had plenty of interaction, lots of questions coming in, and I've got an awful lot for us to get through over the next 40 minutes or so. So, where to begin? So many strategies, so many priorities, but I want to start with a look at resilience and the strategies and steps organisations can take to build more resilient supply chains in the face of disruptions and many uncertainties we're all facing at the moment. Stefan, I'll start with you at NMC Healthcare. What steps do you feel can be taken, and what steps have you taken there to try and increase and improve that resilience?
Well, thank you for the question, and saying hi from a very crispy Abu Dhabi today. It's certainly very hot here today, and the summer's getting started. So in terms of supply chain and building a resilient supply chain, for us it was important to firstly get the right team and the right system in place, and that is something that we're continuously doing and enhancing for sure. So people and processes, certainly very important. But in terms of resilience, you know, I always felt it very important to build that fantastic relationship with your suppliers, understand what the problems may be, the shipping problems, the logistic problems, when disruptions in the supply chain may happen, and knowing ahead of time what's going on. And that includes us giving proper forecasting to our suppliers. And you're continuously being very transparent and continuously telling them your needs, how your needs change, and how your products may change that you may need, whether it be in healthcare, where I am, or some of my colleagues that might be in different industries. And then lastly, always having that alternative, you know, especially in healthcare, we're treating patients. We got to make sure that if we run out of something, what are my second options or even third options to ensure I'm treating my patients the best way. So maybe if I can summarize, you know, excellent relationships with your suppliers, ensure you forecast and are very transparent, and make sure you have a backup, make sure you have second options.
Yes, no pressure in healthcare to make sure you've got a plan B, C, D, and probably E and F if you can as well. No pressure at all. Ahmed, if we can come to you next on that, from your perspective, how do you go about building that resiliency? How do you do it, and how do you see it being done across the industry?
Well, it's something very important to be resilient, especially with the ongoing challenges going worldwide and changes and so on. So I'll take one step back, saying that it starts by understanding what is resilience. The first thing is we need to anticipate, then we cope, and then we evolve and continue finding our way out. So it starts with having the business continuity plans in place and policies, so you ensure that you are moving in the right direction and you develop scenarios and so on. Then you come into the coping phase, where you start living with this changes or those challenges you have until the business starts to evolve and get out of these. So I would agree with also what Stephen just mentioned, but it starts with having the right policies in place. Then you start developing your team to cope up with the changes going on. In addition to all of this, you need to have the right technology. And after that comes the proper communications and even systems integrations with trusted and strategic partners. And alternatives for everything should be there, of course, to make sure that you comply with the demand and respond to the needs and achieve your organizational goals. Thank you. You're mute.
Can you hear me now? Yes.
We can hear you now.
Excellent. There we go. That's always a good step when the host can be heard. Otherwise, I'd be doing it through mime, which wouldn't go well. Iyad, if we can come to you next on that one, the resilience.
Absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me, and greetings to you and my colleagues on the panel. It's such an honor to be with you on the same panel. and greeting to the respected audience. I want to echo what my colleagues tapped on, but I do want to add an emphasis on technology. And I believe that in order to create resilience, the human-based procurement, the old way, the classic way of procurement, will not give us resilience. And in order for us to have the proper diversification, the speed of procurement, the speed of sourcing, the right data and data-driven decisions, we need to have the right procurement. So everything that my colleagues mentioned on top of that, procurement and an emphasis on sourcing technologies.
One thing I will do is just pick up a little bit further on what you said, Ahmed, there for a moment, and that was planning, running scenarios, having simulations of what you would do in certain situations. Ahmed, if I can pick up on that just for a moment before we move on to other subjects, your advice on how to get the best out of those kind of scenarios and how to make sure it works in the real world.
True. See, if you have what technology that fits with your business itself, this is the first trigger. Because I would like to spot on one thing. Many leaders are driven by, I get the technologies that I fit in. It's the other way around. You need to have what is fitting with your business itself and would achieve. So if you have, for example, access to your data, you have access and integrations and trust along the supply chain with your suppliers or whoever is adding value along the value chain itself. In this case, you can establish trust, and through this trust, you start doing some integrations, and then you feed in the big data that you might have along with theirs and so on. And it's like a collaborative environment. So once you have access to this, with the use of technology and AI and all those solutions available in the market now, people can get to have what fits their business. They start integrating them with their data in a secure environment, of course, without breaching anything. And then from there, you start developing scenarios. It might be obvious to a leader that I'm moving in the right direction, but when you're data-driven and you have access to big data, you might have other opportunities that you were missing. So having the right technology, using it to access the data, and then you combine between the artificial intelligence, which is the technology, and the human emotional intelligence, which drives it into the right direction in the end.
Thank you, Ahmed. If we can come to you next on that, Iyad, about simulation and running those scenarios, how valuable do you feel they are in terms of making sure you have resilience within the organisation?
I think they are crucial. So you can use technology. Let me focus on AI because digitization is nothing new, right? And today we're in we cannot not tap on AI. So if you think of if you can think of digitization as a foundation and AI as the augmentation and the empowerment of that digitization, you can digitize all the technical work, all the mechanical work of the procurement side, but you can use AI first to better read your data. You can use AI to better forecast your demand, and therefore you can build resilience if you are able to properly forecast the demand, and you can better read your data, especially for organizations with big data. AI can help you better analyze those data and therefore can build better resilience. But you can't have the AI part if you don't have data. You can't have data if you don't have digitizations to start with.
Yeah, the ecosystem there is fascinating. We will get more onto technology in just a moment. Yeah. Stefan, I'll just come to you last on that when it comes to running scenarios. How crucial are they for you in your line of work, particularly with how essential having those plan B, C, Ds, Rs you were just saying?
Yeah, absolutely, and my colleagues have certainly elaborated on this, and I agree with them. And maybe I can just pick an example out there. We have in our direct procurement in healthcare, which is the drugs and the consumables predominantly that we use to treat our patients. It's absolutely crucial that we have the right amount of stock in place at the right time, without having excess inventories, without going through wastages, and that includes things like seasonalities. Certain drugs are used at certain certain times of year, colds and flu season, hay fever season, etc. So the AI and the systems and the technology and the scenarios behind us helps us plan those, helps us execute those, and helps us make sure that we have the right stuff in the right place at the right time, at the right amounts. So, I mean, maybe that's just a little summary at the end and a showcase a scenario.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of scenarios and examples. It does bring every conversation to life because we speak to so many people from so many different backgrounds. It's always fascinating to see how different particular industries work. Where I want to go next is onto technology. As we were saying there by you, Iyad, about the value of AI and data and digitization. Where I want to take things next about technology is it goes without saying. Technology is crucial to every strategy. You've got to have the right technology to help a strategy move the business and the procurement or supply chain operation forward. The difficult bit is making sure you've got the right technology and you're using it in the right way to make sure your strategy works. I appreciate it's quite a broad question. Iyad, we'll start with you on this if we can. You definitely have skin in this particular game, so to speak. But how do you, when you're working with people, make sure they're using the right solutions, the right technology to make sure their strategies are successful?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, that we have skin in the game, and we say here at Penny Software that we eat, drink, and smoke procurement technology. So that's what we do all day. Now, let me be a bit more specific and zoom in on the digitization of the business processes. Most companies nowadays, at least the companies that we deal with, have established ERPs. And the mistake that we find in the market, the typical mistake would be companies think that just because they have a certain ERP, that digitizing their catalog, digitizing their approval workflow, digitizing their PO, GRN, bill and payment, then they have procurement technology. Well, I had to break it to you. That's not really where the heavy part of procurement is, because you're talking about downstream side of procurement. And the real heavy work in procurement is happening at the upstream side of procurement, sourcing technology, source before contract, source to contract, source to pay, and source to plan. Source to pay, source to plan, not only source to pay. So the upstream side of procurement is where the real heavy work happens. And unfortunately, when we talk about having the right technologies, having an ERP that's managing your POs and managing your approval workflow, that's not procurement. That's just purchasing. Like you don't have the data, because all the real work, all the negotiation, all the sourcing for suppliers, product comparison, analysis, all of that is happening offline. And if you don't have the right technologies that captures all of this data and gives you reading and gives you analysis and helps you forecast based on that data, then you would probably have the wrong technology when it comes to procurement and sourcing in particular. So my belief is, and this is what we see in the market, is anything pre-PO, anything after PO, any ERP can do it. In fact, any accounting system can do it. What you need is pre-PO. What you need is the digitization of the upstream side of procurement.
And I do love it when I speak to someone who's genuinely so passionate about their work. It always brings everything to life, I can tell you are. Stefan, if we can come to you next on this one. When you're working on a strategy within your supply chain or procurement operation, how do you go about making sure you've got the right technology in place to make it work? Because it's the backbone, it's the skeleton, it's the nervous system of the whole operation to make sure the strategy works. It's not an easy job, but how do you go about doing it?
Yeah, very good. Look, it's very important to do the end-to-end process and to map it out completely and to see where the bottlenecks are and where everything sits. And Iyad said it completely right. The sourcing component is so critical. So whether you look at auction tools or engaging with suppliers and these kind of sourcing functions, that's where lots of the work happens before you go through those processes that could be automated, etc. I might just want to add to that. And whilst we look at the entire stream, procurement procure-to-pay cycle and demand planning that we do as well, for us it's critical that we look at our inventory management as well. That feeds into our supply chain. So that is one of the bottlenecks we do at the end. So to ensure that whilst we look at the inventory and how it's consumed and how that triggers the supply chain again into purchasing again and assisting us in our demand planning. So to answer your question, yeah, we really take that entire flow, that entire chain of the supply chain. That's where the work comes from, and iron out every specific tools and see where are the big bottlenecks, where do we have too much manpower, where does it take too much time, and we try and find the right system or applications that helps us iron out those processes, save time, and ensure that we have an efficient, seamless supply chain.
Thank you, Stefan. Ahmed, if I can come to you on this one, I'm particularly interested in your insight on this because, of course, your group has so many different elements to it. There's so many different moving parts. When you're implementing those different strategies, is the flexibility of the technology so important?
Of course, and before I move into answering this, I have to also mention another thing. My needs yesterday are not my needs today and will not be my needs tomorrow. So that means that there should be a very flexible system to cater all the requirements dealing with my business to make sure that I manage it properly and have things moving in the right direction, aligning with the organizational goals. So flexibility and a very strong system should be there in place. What I would say, it starts from understanding the business requirements, understanding the expectations, and how can we move on with the development of business nowadays compared to the past. So I would expect that the system would be helping me to cater my upstream, downstream, and everything. In addition to this, it also provides me with access to market intelligence. I might be having the big data internally, but data now is available everywhere. If the system can cope up with this and can give me the visibility of this, it for sure will enhance my decisions. And also it will take the redundant jobs being done by the team so we can reallocate our resources in a much more proper way. I might be thinking that I have the right elements to make the right decision and so on. But when I access my data through a strong system, that helps me get a better involvement in better decision-making, better visibility, and even helping the organization in planning. So choosing the right system is very crucial for the business, and having the system flexible, of course, it's a given for nowadays business.
Of course, I do like how demanding you are of the technology, the fact you're appreciating your demands are changing and know it has to be able to move with you. So that's a fascinating take on that. Where I want to move next is, it's been a huge topic throughout the event today, and that is supplier relationships. You know, we discussed it in the earlier transformation forum. You can go through a transformation, but if you can't take your suppliers with you, you've got a problem. So let's look at supplier relationships in terms of a wider strategy. From all of your perspectives, what strategies can be adopted to try and make sure and enhance the collaboration and have really strong, meaningful relationships with those suppliers? Stefan, if we can start with you on this one, how do you go about it? Because a supplier relationship is the lifeblood of the procurement operation.
Absolutely. So there's two things I always like to say. Procurement is too important to leave to only procurement. We got to get our suppliers involved. We got to get our colleagues involved. And another thing is, whether we like it or not, we need our suppliers. They just don't need us to sell to us. We need them because we need their product. So if I can drill down on one point, and that is transparency. Transparency and honesty, should I say that? The more we continuously share data and allow our suppliers access to our data and how we buy and how we utilize and how we go about our business, the more they can add value to this, the more that relationship grows. So the more they tell me about, and vice versa, the more they tell me about what's happening in their world, the better. So that transparency and that sharing of data is absolutely key to a supplier relationship. They know when my stock is going to run out. I hear from them when their stock is going to run out. I hear when there's supply chain problems. I hear when there's so that relationship for me in the healthcare environment, and we can talk about COVID in the past where we had to buy masks from all over the world, for example. This has been key in a supplier relationship to ensure that we have our products in place at the right time in a healthcare setting for sure.
Absolutely, Stefan. Ahmed, we'll come to you next on that one. How do you go about enhancing those relationships? How do you make those relationships really work for both parties?
That's a very critical and important question. Thank you for this. I would say one thing before I start answering this, it's just it takes two hands to clap, right? So the relationship between procurement and suppliers is very, very, very critical and essential for business success. Imagine you have requisitions or you have demand on something and you don't have somebody to fulfill this for you. So the idea is you have to have proper suppliers in place. You have to have transparency. You have to have proper communications. We are in a collaborative environment now. Everything is open, but the much more higher step that we should always focus on is how do we identify our strategic suppliers who are extremely essential for our business. And the open dialogue should always be there with them to ensure that they understand our business needs and our timelines, our requisitions and everything in the relationship. So continuous dialogue is important. Having the right suppliers who can cater requisitions. Imagine, for example, in COVID time, if I don't have strategic relationships with suppliers, who would reply to my requisitions when I have them and it is critical for me to respond to my business? That's something very important, and that's why relations with suppliers are very, very crucial for the business. In addition, if you have the strategic supplier in place and the level of trust is high, why don't I work on using this relationship to put it into a much more integrated way? Such, for example, we can take the integrations between systems. So that provides flexibility in the relationship itself. I understand his point of strength, he understands my point of strength, and so on. And we work collaboratively to respond to the needs and have a successful win-win relationship.
And that's the point everyone wants to get to. Iyad, your approach at Penny Software to that, getting those relationships right, not just going to your suppliers, but acting as a supplier of software for other people. How do you go about that?
Right. So the critical thing about procurement is that majority of your stakeholders are actually external stakeholders, not internal, meaning that they are people who are outside of your organization. And that's particularly unique to procurement. And building those relationships and ensuring collaboration with suppliers, one thing that the technology cannot replace is the human touch, is that human connection. And I truly believe that in the time of crises, suppliers will respond first to the buyers that they feel like they have a human, intimate relationship with them. It really comes down to this at the end of the day, but you can't successfully do this if you are not automating again, I go back to the operational, mechanical work. You want to make sure that your RFQs, your contracts, everything you have is automated so the procurement managers can actually build those relationships, those are human relationships with their suppliers. So technology is there to support. It's to some degree, it can to some degree augment, but it will never replace, when it comes to the topic of building relationship with suppliers, it will never replace the humans. And one thing I may add, that suppliers at the end of the day want to make sure that and unlike what my colleague alluded to, they need to know your plan. And why do they need to know your plan? One thing, of course, for them to forecast, but honestly, to also get excited with you. You need to show them that your business with them is going to grow. So for them to take this relationship seriously, they want to make sure that there is sustainability and there is a growth to this relationship. So show them your plan, be transparent with them, and of course, use the proper technology and never forget the human touch.
Yes, it's the oldest of old cliches that people buy from people. In fact, it's so old, it's probably written on the inside of a cave somewhere, I'd imagine, somewhere in the world. But you're absolutely right, it is that human touch. Where I want to go next, with supplier relationships is it's really easy for us to celebrate when things are going well, when you've got those relationships down. They're an extension of your business. You've got integrations, you work well together, everyone knows where it's going. What I'd love a little bit of insight on from all of you, and I'm not going to put you on the spot for names, but have you ever had examples where a relationship hasn't been working, there's been an issue, but you fixed it? You've gone about and you've made a correction, you've course corrected and are now getting there. I absolutely won't put you on the spot for names, that wouldn't be fair, but Ahmed, can I start with you on that? How you've gone about correcting those sort of situations to everyone's benefit?
Again, a relationship, is it to, again, it's about developing the relationship between the suppliers and the procurement teams working with them. So if you have that maturity level to drive a successful relationship, you will need to work on, enhancing the communications, providing feedback whenever possible. So in this case, you will be like working to make sure that you enhance whatever, rectify whatever happened to ensure that these suppliers are complying and moving forward for a successful relationship. It's not just a one-time drop-in situation that allows you to just take a whole decision about the entire relationship. It's a collaboration between both parties to ensure both perform in a proper way.
Absolutely, definitely a collaboration. Iyad, we'll come to you next on that. Again, I won't put you on the spot, but have you got examples where you've had to correct a supplier relationship or as an organisation and got a good result from it?
Well, I can tell you a story. We closed with a customer, one of the, let me say, a very large multi-billion public company in Saudi Arabia, and we closed with them to digitize their procurement. Now, what happened is that they had a complete change of management, which is not surprising, right? It happens all the time, which is, by the way, one of the hurdles that happens all the time in supplier relations, change of management. So this particular company had a new change of management, and the new management just stopped everything the old management did, all the decisions. Of course, we fell victim for that decision as well. So they came to us and said, yep, we're putting this on hold. We didn't even start working with them, right? They signed the PO, everything, and they said that we're putting this on hold. Now, what we did, the only way to rectify that situation and build back the relationship with the new management, not through technology, not through processes, not through forecasting, through going there, handshake, and meet with them. That's how you build a supply relationship. Of course, in this case, we are the supplier. But what we did is we created this trust. This customer now is one of our biggest advocates. They were this close to churn before they even get started if we have not invested in that extra supplier relationship and relationship building.
I do like a happy ending to a story like that. I was worried for a moment, but no, that's an excellent result there. Stefan, if I can come to you next on that, about fixing those sort of relationships, what sort of strategy do you take if something isn't going as it should?
Yeah, I think I won't spend a lot of time on this, but rather echo what my colleagues have said. To fix something is not a system that can fix it most of the time. It's a relationship that will fix it. And it literally comes down to sitting down with them, sorting out the problem. And usually we have an end goal in play. End goal for us is usually the patient. What can we do for the best outcome of the patient? We sit with drug shortages and product shortages all the time. We need to find alternatives all the time. And that means sitting down with our distributors and suppliers and say, let's figure this out. Let's find a problem. It's for the benefit of the patient. And we usually come to a good outcome. We're all humans. We all make mistakes. They make mistakes. I make mistakes. But it's going back to that relationship, fixing the problem, finding an alternative, and moving on.
Speaking of moving on, that is what we will do now and move to a very different area, and that is sustainability. It's something we haven't really spoken about much as yet, but it is absolutely crucial. The focus on sustainability is growing exponentially, it really is. But how can organisations such as all of you incorporate sustainable initiatives into your procurement and supply chain strategies? Iyad, we'll start with you. how do we go about making sure that sustainability is a real watermark through every single part of the business and part of the procurement and supply chain strategy?
Absolutely. So we all know for sustainability, we need to work with the right suppliers, the eco-friendly suppliers, the suppliers that meet the requirement. But sustainability in its form must be first economically sustainable. So working with suppliers that are eco-friendly but not economically sustainable might work for some times, but it's just not sustainable. So the foundation is to make sure that the relationship, the business value proposition itself is economically sustainable. And on top of that, we can work with the right suppliers. And I think that we have the ESG guidelines that are loud and clear and made everything easy, quite frankly, on how to navigate that.
That is sound advice. Yes, you do have to make sure that that is economically viable, because there are so many options out there, so many great ideas. You do have to do that due diligence. Stefan, if we can come to you next on that, incorporating sustainability into procurement and supply chain strategies.
Yeah, for sure. So there's two angles, two approaches we take. Is one is ourselves, our own products or services. How can we make them more sustainable? And that starts from saving light bulbs, saving energy, saving water, saving etc. in our own hospitals, in the buildings as we go about our business, and finding intuitive ways to reduce water consumption and to reduce energy consumption. So that's something we consistently do. And then, of course, the products that we purchase ourselves. Instead of buying plastic bags for our pharmacies, use eco-friendly bags, etc. And I think these are all the common things that Iyad also mentioned. The commercial aspect, spot on. In the short term, most of these products are more expensive. But if you look at the complete scenario of how you can save with energy on the one end and maybe add more to certain products at the end, and then collaborate in the whole scenario, add to the sustainability, that's the best way forward. And then most importantly, we ensure that the suppliers we work with also have their own sustainability programs. That means the people we buy from is not necessarily just a product that is more sustainable, but the way they do things, the way they manufacture their products, the way they go about it is also sustainable, and that just compounds the impact of the sustainability itself. Yeah, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, but it's that bigger picture, isn't it, to make sure it does work in the longer term. Ahmed, we'll come to you on this before we move on to some thoughts about data. How do you go about that for you, incorporating sustainability through the whole procurement and supply chain strategy?
Well, sustainability is a very important aspect. ESG in general, it contributes to the business and contributes to the community, which is a responsibility of all the big groups operating in any country. And talking about sustainability, I would just classify it into two things. The first one comes from identifying how can we become sustainable. This is number one. Second thing, since our suppliers are our partners, we need to work sometimes with them to let them embed sustainability initiatives in their systems and how they can cope up with our requirements and moving into green procurement. Apart from this, onboarding the right consultants to invite us and enable us to have more visibility to the carbon footprint and all of these things. So we start enhancing ourselves. However, also having the right suppliers who are green suppliers without having any big impact on costs, that's very important. And we take huge initiatives in this. We do suppliers ESG due diligence to ensure that they are working properly as per the scopes and so on, because that, even if they don't look to be very cost effective at the start, but on the long term, it will have a sustainable impact on our numbers and so on. So being a group that is leading in the country, that's one of the key initiatives that we are taking. It is adopted within the group, and we already started initiatives like that, uplifting our suppliers and inviting in suppliers who would help us achieve this initiative itself. And of course, if I can get a solution to serve something that I'm doing instead of something that was not environmental, friendly, it's much better needed. We just need to make sure that we land that right technology without affecting our costs in the end.
Absolutely. Moving on to data, we are running out of time slightly, but we've mentioned data on a fair few occasions through this discussion. And one thing I'm always fascinated about is the sheer amount of data there is now available. You can get it on everything, but unless you use it properly or know the data you're looking for, you can have data for the sake of it. How do you, what's the expression I'm looking for? How do you see the wood from the trees? How do you find the critical data that's useful to you, the emerging data that can give you an advantage? How do you go about that data management to give you an advantage in your strategy? Stefan, I'll start with you on this one.
I like to say, don't make what's measurable important, but make what's important measurable. And we sit on mountains and tons of data, and this data can often be misinterpreted in different ways and utilized in different ways. But it all comes down to everyday decisions we make in procurement are based on data, whether it's amount of stock I have left, whether it's the analytics of a product, whether it's pricing data. So it's really important that my data is accurate and I use the right amount of data to make my decisions every single day. And add to that the real-timeness of the data. The sooner I have it available and the more accurate and sooner I have it, the quicker I can make my decisions to the better outcome of my supply chain.
Yeah, Stefan, how you started that one, I think I need that on a mug. That is a fantastic expression. We can learn an awful lot from that. Ahmed, if we can come to you next on that one, I'm sure you echo a lot of what Stefan said there, but how would you add to that?
Really echo what Stefan was just mentioning. I would add to it that every company has treasure of data, but the idea is, do we have access to all of this data when we're making decisions? That's the question we should ask ourselves. It might be that we're making decisions every day, but are we making the best decisions or no? Having the access to data will enable us to become more effective, more adding value to the business itself. And I think here AI and ML, machine learning, play a big role in this because, yes, you have big bulk amount of data. Are they relevant or not? So you need some tool or some instrument that allows you to cleanse and get what's relevant to the case that you have, and also to provide you with the right reports at the right time so you can make real effective decisions for your organization. So yes, accessing data is very important, and this can happen through using the technology and mainly artificial intelligence.
Thank you, Ahmed. And speaking of technology, this is where we bring you in. Iyad, that set you up nicely. For you, managing that data, where on earth do you start? I do not envy some people when the amount of data they have to cope with, and as Stefan was saying, separate the stuff that's important rather than just the things you can measure.
Absolutely. The thing with procurement is devil is always in the details, and high-level data is just not enough. Having access to data of what have we purchased, who did we purchase it from, and how much did we purchase it for, that's very high-level data. And that's just not enough. Devil is always in the details with the procurement. And I wanna go back to sourcing optimization is what happened before we bought, what happened before we signed this contract. How many RFQs have we sent? How many suppliers have quoted us? Why 5? Why not 50? Why not 500, right? And what did they quote us? How much did we negotiate? How much did they revise? How much did we drop based on that negotiation? What was the average? What was the need? What was the median? What was all of that data? All of that data, and you can have the data of the conversation, the back and forth and negotiation. You can have data of all the attributes, all the factors that you've had in the RFQ or the RFP. All that data is what can give you great insight, not only your PO. So high-level data is just not enough.
Okay, and that is a fantastic place for us to finish, I think. I'd like to thank all of you. You've been incredibly candid with some of your opinions on things and your own experiences and examples. So thank you all for joining us here at Procurement and Supply Chain Live Dubai.
Absolute pleasure. Bye-bye.
Superb. Yep,
Thank
really
you for
enjoyed
having
your
us.
company. A pleasure. Thank you.